Hi, welcome to the Payroll Nerd Podcast. My name is Brian Bryan, and I've been working in the payroll industry for over 8 years implementing payroll and HRS software. The goal of this podcast is to open discussion not just to payroll people out in the world, but to members of all organizations that your function is important. We don't just issue checks, we provide crucial information and data to your organization through payroll and HRS software. Employers are the most important resource of any organization. If you don't pay them, you don't have any. We'll give you some tips and tricks to make it easier and more efficient for you to work. Today's episode, let's talk about the new pay transparency laws. Happy February. Hope everybody got through January. I wanted to take the time to talk about new pay transparency laws. The laws went into effect on Jan 1 in the following states: California, Rhode Island, Washington. States and cities had already had the law in previous years: Colorado, Connecticut, Maryland, Nevada, Jersey City, New Jersey, Ithaca, New York City, Westchester County, New York, Cincinnati, and Toledo, Ohio. Colorado's had the law since 2021. You might have been busy in 2021, but if you saw any job ads or position descriptions, there were many companies not ready to release the pay range and note like this position is not available in the state of Colorado or something very similar. Connecticut requires the salary information upon extension of an offer. Also, if an employee changes roles, they can request the salary ranges. That's pretty standard for a lot of these other roles. But one I wanted to look at a little deeper in is New York City law, because I think that's really the model, right? So, number one, compensation versus wages. This piece is really important. By making this distinction, employers cannot include costs of medical, time off, retirement match, etc., into the total compensation and the pay period or hourly wages required. So, salary, hourly, what it is. Think about me, a restaurant allows a meal. Uh, that can't be included. So you can't be like, your $15 minimum wage and you get a meal and then spread it out. So really you're saying you're getting paid $16 an hour. And like the tech sector, right? Stock-based compensation. So you could do something like, you get somebody could have a $200,000 salary, but 50,000 of it's in stock-based compensation. So you can't. That's not really their wage. Range, maximum and minimum. So something like $15 and up is not valid, or maximum salary no minimum is also not valid. So you can't say paying up to $20 an hour or something like that. There's no limit to the ranges, but if you're providing a salary range like 50,000 to 300,000, uh, you know, you'd be causing a lot of confusion. Fortune magazine had an article from November with some crazy ranges. One was 173,000 to 359,000. That's a range of 185K. That's pretty crazy. But here's the thing: if one of these positions that you're looking at an internal job posting, and you see it's a huge range, and you're in the low level of it, that gives you more information to ask for more money. So, like, let's say that 50 to $300,000 range, you're making 60,000. You're going to boss like, why is this role being advertised for 300,000? So that's going to really kind of narrow it down. Large range, I imagine those are for like, like a VP or something, right? With a larger range, because it could be based on experience that it might be a lot. So that's always a possibility. The third one applies to transfer promotions. We'll talk about this a little bit later, but giving employees a range upon transfer promotion is super important. Stops employers from listing just entry level positions, promoting thereafter with no accountability to wage. Like, so, if you were looking at getting people for 100,000, and the and the jobs that they're targeting 150, giving somebody like $100,000 job, and then like, oh, you get promoted in a year, and not giving that promotion, and then you only give them a bump of like $5,000. They really frustrating. So this kind of avoids that. So I think that's really important. There is also many states that don't allow recruiters, hiring managers, interviewers to ask what your former salary was. They'll ask what your target salary is. I think that's just as important as salary transparency, especially if you're coming out of college or going back to school. To say, hey, here's my target salary. This makes a lot more sense to me than some of this other stuff, but it is important. Also, for all those internet memes, stories for our Reddit anti-work, which I like looking at sometimes. It's illegal to stop employees from discussing pay. Just don't be a jerk. Okay. Let's talk about an HBR article from August of 2022 about the unintended consequences of pay transparency. So one thing I like to point out, this article, after I kind of reviewed it, I kind of realized that this is about businesses that did pay transparency on their own without a state mandate, right? So that would make a difference. A state would level the playing field. It can reduce some of these consequences. That's why some of the state laws are really, really important. If some of the bigger companies were to do this, it won't help a lot of people. So one thing about consequences of pay transparency is it compresses pay. So this makes sense to me, right? So if you didn't have a salary band, you're probably going to have them now. If you didn't have a range before, they're kind of all over the place. You're going to have one now. It's going to pull everybody towards the middle, right? So let's say that you have 10 employees in a position, your salary range is way out of whack because people have different levels of experience and whatnot. And you're not able to make a decent salary band because the wages are all over the place. You might make a median pay range with the upper level being the upper level and then the lower level giving people raises to get them up a little bit closer. And that's going to drop average compensation, right? So the people that were higher up might have been getting raises of 3%. Maybe they get a raise of 1 or not even a raise at all because you got to bump everybody else up to get kind of in there. So in this article, researchers found that in the government California department, compensation on average dropped 7% because of this pay compression. There also is going to be an increase in personalized rewards or requests. So if you can't get a raise, you're at the top of the range, and ranges are going to be moved. Maybe you can ask for paid training, maybe you can ask for more PTO. I see a lot of that, especially with compensation versus wage. There's a wage and you want to be the higher level of it. They can't do that. Maybe they can compensate you in other ways. You're also going to have to have a review performance cycles and how those raises are giving out, right? So you want that process to be objective as possible. Filled with many KPIs are usually managed. Because if you can't do this, then your salary ranges aren't going to make any sense. So you're going to have to make it a little bit more number driven than, number and kind of like feel, right? So that's another unintended consequence. So maybe before you had a performance review with KPIs and then you had an overall rating that was separate. So you had some give and take in there. That's probably going to be gone. You also can't allow extending circumstances. Maybe they switch positions. Maybe there's something else in there that would be like, well, I would normally give them a raise, but they just change positions. They're not hitting their KPIs. I can't raise their salary because that's not fair to everybody else now. But in the past, maybe you would be able to do that because now there's this pay transparency. So one month that I would employ if you're a publicly traded company is restricted stock units or some other kind of stock-based compensation reward employees. I really see this expanding. If everybody's kind of the top of the range, with compensation versus wages, you could really say, all right, well, I'm going to give you more money in stock-based compensation versus something else. Another one I see, which kind of hard to describe, but it's proliferation of job titles. So many times job titles I think are overstated compared to what I've seen. Not to get into the recent conversation about managers and not paying overtime, etc. But just ask me about graduate school, trying to reconcile ability versus job titles of some folks. It was really confusing. I think one method an organization could use to reduce comparisons of salaries would make unusual job titles or something similar. So maybe in one position it's called one thing, but in your job you're going to call it something else, and then that reduces comparisons, so that makes it really hard. So another unintended consequence, if you don't have presence in these above states and you do a remote work option, you might shy away from recruiting those, right? So if you are a remote company, or maybe you are in Chicago and you're looking at some remote talent, if they're in New York, you might not even look there. You might not even look in Colorado. you might not look at any of those states that have that thing. Just kind of stay away from it. So it's going to really, reduce your opportunities there. Okay, so that is kind of the conversation on pay transparency laws. I think it is a great thing. I'm more of a fan of target salary. I wouldn't, if somebody asked me what my previous salary was, I wouldn't even tell them. I would say, here's what I'm targeting. Not even getting that conversation. So that's kind of where I'm at. All right, crime and payroll. So we're going to go to Oklahoma where the wind comes sweeping down the plains. Horrible, but it's fun. So from 2012 to 2020, Darla Braley was a payroll administrator for the St. Paul the Apostle Catholic Church. Starting in 2014, Darla started writing checks for unauthorized expenses. She wrote about 198 checks before she caught. It's about 3 a month. These expenses seem to be credit card payments, utilities, and other personal spending. Court filings also indicated that Braley had access to the checking account online and made some unauthorized transactions. The total, $451,117, about $75K a year. Wow. Also, this part I thought was pretty funny. Was a U.S. attorney that when this case was given to them, they went after Ms. Braley for tax evasion, leaving out income that was ill-gotten from the church. So the government's going to get theirs no matter what. She pleaded guilty in 2022 and is currently awaiting sentencing. So I took a look at their website, and they have a finance community and like the bulletin with their contact information. So that's good. So you can kind of see like who's in charge of that kind of stuff if you're in the situation. I was looking for some kind of breakdown expenses. They didn't have that, but they did put the amount of the weekly offerings in there. So that's cool because you kind of know what the revenue, the tithing of the church is. So you know how much money is kind of coming in. And then like when they spent a lot, they would be in the bulletin information. So looks like they're doing a pretty good job of being as transparent as they could. And they were publishing this well before Miss Braley was discovered. So they're, as far as they go, they're transparent about it, but they still kind of got caught up in it. So how do you stop this? I put two-step process. The person preparing the payroll does not, quote unquote, hit the button to process. Somebody else would have to sign off on the payroll and actually push the button. So I've done this multiple times, multiple clients where somebody previews the payroll, gets all ready, and then actually somebody's the one that hits the processing, so that somebody has a chance to double check. Review payroll monthly on their finance console. So, I mean, this is a church, so my experience in that, there's probably a couple salaried workers, and then you have like hourly workers that don't work very much. Maybe they teach Sunday school or something, and they're only working an hour or two a week. So seeing this amount of money, like that's why I was trying to see kind of like what their budget was. Like it's pretty crazy that she was able to do 75 extra years, like a whole nother salary. Well, they kind of finding out. So, there must have been something in there that they can kind of saw. So that's what I would have, based on a finance team or accounting team to know what your payroll is on a monthly basis, and then be able to double check that. A lot of times they can get stuck, but in this case, two people, one person running payroll is never a great idea. All right, well, I hope you enjoy this episode. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to get me on Twitter. It's Payroll Nerd Pod. And if you want to drop me an email, you're looking for some kind of advice or consulting, or just want to talk about the show, it's Brian@BrianBrideMBA.com. Thanks, and have a great week.